Welcome to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times, sponsored by MSA Safety. In this series, we bring you sessions from the Emergency Services Show and the Emergency Tech Show 2025. Dr. Camilla de Camargo and Dr. Stephanie Wallace from Lancaster University reveal the findings of the first national survey on police uniforms commissioned by the Police Federation of England and Wales. In this lively episode, they explore how ill-fitting uniforms affect officers' health, safety and operational effectiveness, and discuss the urgent need for inclusive, functional uniform reform.
So, just to give you a bit of background as to where this research comes from, I did my PhD in 2017 with Greater Manchester Police, called A Uniform Not Uniform, which basically, as the title suggests, looked at the 43 forces of England and Wales doing everything differently, including different design, different budgets, different costs, and different preferences by chief constables. So this really led to a postcode lottery of not only safety, cost, and design, but also the morale and well-being of officers and staff. So this led to When the Uniform Doesn't Fit project, because when I was fitted into a stab vest to do my secondment with Greater Manchester Police, I said to the uniform stores manager, "Hi, I think you've given me a man's stab vest because my breasts are under my chin." And they were like, "Oh, no. Those flat plates are just unisex." And I was like, "Oh, right, okay, so it doesn't fit anyone with any sort of boobs then." It's like, "Don't worry about it. Just put it under your chin or in your armpit is usually what the women do." And I was thinking that it's not only not right, but it can't be comfortable for long shifts at a time. And I was thinking, long-term medical conditions, how can this affect women's not only breast health, but generally? And I think that while my PhD was looking at the postcode lottery of design, I think it was also starting to open and unearth other long-standing health conditions that were caused or made worse by wearing a police uniform every day for hours at a time. So, I spoke to 88 women in 5 police forces in the summer of 2023 who detailed minor to major long-standing medical health conditions and disabilities that were being made worse by wearing a police uniform. And to be honest, when I was doing the women's study, I had men contact me on Twitter saying, "I have heard about this study. I want to talk about my testicles too." And I was like, "Oh, okay. What do you want to talk about?" And actually, jokes aside, some of these men were saying, although I can't prove it, they believe that their infertility, they've been trying to have a baby with their wife for years. They believe that wearing restrictive trousers had caused them to have infertility problems. But again, with a lot of emergency services, you have to prove those things. So, how can you prove those things? How can you prove that X equals Y? So, this came about around the same time that Mrs. R. Callum, a firearms inspector from West Midlands Police, successfully sued the chief constable for £820,000 for direct and indirect sex discrimination pertaining to not providing her with a well-fitted police uniform, providing her with men's uniform, basically. And a lot of this fit into the work that I'd done on the historical design of women's wearing men's uniform, or unisex, as they like to call it back in the late 90s, which basically didn't fit anyone. So, was this opening the floodgates to all sorts of legal implications when you are not listening to staff and uniformed officers that have to wear this stuff day in, day out? This stuff is so easily trivialized and historically dismissed, especially by male line managers, to women officers who are probably younger and they've come in, they don't want to say anything, etc. So, nothing's happening. So this led to the design of the National Uniform and Equipment Survey. I'm a qualitative criminologist by trade, which means I like to look at focus groups, interviews, I like to talk to people. And I brought in my wonderful colleague who prefers numbers. So we made it
talk to people.
numbers. She's a quantitative criminologist. So we thought we made a formidable team in designing a much wider survey, because I wanted to look at how all 43 forces in England and Wales, were they happy with their uniforms? I think we knew from the original work that that was probably not the case. We also looked at 6 non-home office forces as well. Now, we knew that local surveys had already been done, but what were they doing with that data? We knew the trousers were rubbish. We knew the stab vest was rubbish. So why wouldn't they do anything about it? Now, the greatest thing is when I actually spoke to police forces, they were telling me, oh, we've actually changed the trousers. Okay, great. So you've got some really good trousers. Are you sharing that with other forces then? No. So there was very low to no data sharing between forces. So we thought the wider survey was really important to kind of give us a massive database to, well, provide a much bigger evidence database than is required for these things. So we wanted to investigate the physical and psychological impacts of uniform wearing. We wanted to ask about sick leave because the police force want to know about cost. They want to know, how much is this costing me? Is this about a £5 pair of trousers, or is this about £100 lost on sick leave? So I thought it was important to quantify those things, and we want to know how the uniform has contributed. And it's not necessarily about proof. You know, why do we need to prove that those things had caused that disability? You know, it's more like, how do you feel as a worker at work? How does this affect your morale and well-being when you feel that you are not being listened to? So we worked regularly with the Police Federation. They were our collaborators in this project. The National Uniform Working Group and Blue Light Commercial, to include things like practical questions, complaint processes, what was being done if actually anybody did complain, because again, it's so trivial, or has been seen as trivial before, that when you actually do stand up and complain, what is being done about it? So we looked at how things are getting dealt with, interaction between PPE and uniform, because of course, if you sit down in a car and your stab vest is riding up in your chest because your pants and your utility belt don't fit properly, it's not going to work. You'll go.
Right. Okay. So we had the survey open last summer for 6 weeks, and over that time, 27,000 people opened up and started to complete the survey. Now, this was more than just the 43 police forces in England and Wales, but we also had the non-home office forces included in that. Okay, so 27,000 people opened the survey, and we had, in the end, over 20,000 eligible responses. We wanted to get a snapshot of uniform as they're currently wearing it. We heard from a lot of people that said, yeah, 10 years ago I had this horrendous uniform, but I'm not wearing it anymore. Well, that's great, and their stories are really important, but we wanted to know those who are currently wearing uniform, how are they experiencing that? As Camilla said before, she's a qualitative researcher. I'm a quantitative researcher, so I like drop-down boxes. I like you being able to tick boxes because they're much easier to analyse. Camilla insisted that we have the free text boxes, and actually I'm really glad.
Although I regretted it when 44,000 comments came in about their uniform.
So clearly people had a lot to say. Yeah. Okay. And this was one of the largest surveys of its kind in the world as well. So it's a huge database, it's a huge evidence base that we can use, hopefully, to good use. So as I said, wanted current uniform wearers, and we had a pretty good response from a variety of officers and staff. So 84% were officers, 16% staff, and again, male and female, which is relatively representative of the police population. Okay, so what did the results say? Well, skipped a slide. The first question we asked, well, what was your overall experience of uniform? And overwhelmingly, as you can see in this red box, 56% said it was negative. Okay? Now, what's really interesting to say is about 23% were a bit apathetic, and only 20%, so that's 1 in 5, said that their uniform experience was positive. That's relatively problematic, I would say. Okay, we broke it down by forces, and as you can see here, it's not very clear, but you can see the red line just shows the distribution of those who said it was negative. So we've got our kind of worst offenders at the top. Here, Merseyside, South Yorkshire. West Midlands Police were 68% said it was negative. That's huge variation in responses. And down at the bottom end of the table, North Yorkshire Police were the only force where the majority of responses were positive. So in North Yorkshire, 44% said, Actually, it was positive. So it's huge variation. Now, all of you will know if you've worn uniform, there are certain items that are more problematic than others. So the most prolific was the general purpose body armour, and this was worn by almost 2/3 of respondents. That's almost 2/3 of the 21,000 responses said this is problematic. So 61% said it's negatively impacting them and their experience in uniform.
So some of the qualitative comments that supported this were things like pressure on area where cysts had developed. They were wearing stab vests that were causing cysts that resulted in them having to have surgery. Another one said definitely gotten skin cysts from the pressure of wearing the armor and bruising of ribs after multiple days of running in the vest. Another one said, I've made my mate who's driving stop and said, you're going to have to stop. And you're out of the car and having to de-kit, take it all off. Think about the safety implications of those things just to be comfortable because she just couldn't breathe. Another one saying, this was really sad, just saying pain does not cover it. Positional issues with the constant weight has reshaped my back and neck over years of wear.
The cargo trouser were another problematic item.
Also called the thrush trousers, guys, thrush trousers.
So 58% of respondents actually wear the cargo trousers. As you can see, even just looking at them, they don't look particularly comfortable. There's no stretch. They're faded, they're washed out. So 69%, almost 7 in 10 said that these trousers are problematic.
And when I was doing the focus groups, a woman I had never met before ran up to me and she was like, look at my camel toe. You hear about that, aren't you? Take a picture. I was like, oh, okay. I've never even met you before, but sure, I'll take a picture. But it just kind of related to all the things, all the medical conditions that we were talking about here. Like, jokes aside, yes, it was funny doing the focus groups, but some of the conditions talked about are really problematic for women who are suffering with these things on a regular basis. Some of the men said, well, I presume the men, the standard trousers really dig into the testicles. You can't guess nowadays, can you? Trousers have literally exploded in the crotch while I've crouched down, causing bruising to my testicles. And the women said general stomach issues due to the trousers being so tight. I've had constant thrush and water infections, and I get the worst pain in my ovaries as the band of the cargo pants have no stretch at all, and it hurts constantly and presses into them.
Patrol boots were a huge an item that was worn by the majority of respondents. So 72% said that they wear the patrol boot. And this was a statistic that slightly confused us. We were like, right, okay, so if everyone's wearing it, the boots must be really, really good. And then we looked at the comments, and they said, no, they're not good. They're actually that bad that we buy our own.
Yeah. So one of them said, after wearing the patrol boots, I developed plantar fasciitis. A physio documented that was because of the boots and stated that it's very common with these types of boots. And now buy my own boots at the cost to myself. So these things are often not expense backed by the force. A woman also told me that she asked her husband to buy her an 80-pound pair of, I can't say the brand, plug any brands, for Christmas. For Christmas, that was her Christmas present because the trousers were causing her so much pain.
So you can see now why we like these qualitative comments. It just gives us a little bit more kind of context as to what we were really finding in the survey. So the utility belt was another one that was really problematic. Now, not worn by as many respondents, but certainly for those that did wear them, 44% were saying actually they negatively impacted. I mean, again, you can see by the comments why they were so problematic.
Saying it makes it awkward getting in and out of the car. My belt gets in the way, it gets stuck on the car a lot. And just thinking a life and death situation where every second matters, getting caught on the car in these situations is just not acceptable.
Okay. Now, the all-climate wicker shirt, now these are kind of replaced a lot of the shirts that are worn by the forces. They were worn by 65% of respondents. And again, 42% were saying that they were negative. And we were thinking, well, again, why? Why are these? We would think they would be better. But in actual fact,
saying we are now issued with these awful plain black wicking shirts that rub on the Adam's apple, no embroidery, a one-shape-fits-all approach. I think it's the same with the women as well. Every single item of uniform seems to be, oh, if you've got this heteronormative body, It's supposed to fit everybody, but actually they say, I don't think it fits anyone at all. Another one said about the material being cheap, polyester. Yes, it dries quickly, but it smells horrible and is very sweaty under non-breathable body armor. And when you're not being, not having the time to wash in between shifts, and not wash your armpits, obviously, that unacceptable, guys. Wash your kit because you're not having enough replacements.
Okay. And the last one of these was the dress shirt. So again, these weren't worn by as many forces now, but for those that did wear them, 63% of them said they're not fit for purpose, they're not comfortable.
Not practical for modern day policing. Another one said, not sure why in the comms centre we need to wear a full dress shirt. A smart polo would suffice. We are not in a client-facing role. And this is another example of how the one-size-fits-all doesn't fit anyone.
Okay. Some of the comments were a little bit dismissive, and they said things like, it's not a fashion show, this is not what we're using it to do. And we said, no, actually, we totally agree. So we want to know about how functional are they? How fit for purpose are they? And sadly, 51% of respondents said, actually, no, they are not fit for purpose. And there was huge variation. So Durham Constabulary, for example, 77% in Durham Constabulary said, it's not fit for purpose. It's not doing the things that we need it to do as a uniform, to protect us, to do all the things, to do our job well. And we spoke about the restrictive nature of even just the utility belt. That's really quite problematic when you need to be able to react. Similarly, we asked, how restrictive is it? Or it restricts my movement. And you can see 64% on average said, yes, the uniform restricts my movement. I can't do the things that I need to do wearing my uniform. And again, there is huge variation depending on the force. It doesn't keep me cool in summer. So when you're in full riot gear and you stand in the blazing sunshine, well, it's horrendous. It doesn't keep you cool. Similarly, it's not keeping people warm in the winter. So they were complaining that they're on the shift, they were not wearing jackets that are waterproof, they're not keeping them warm, or they're standing out exposed to the elements. And we've got some fantastic work being done currently in terms of winter storm. Amanda, give us a wave. That's actually looking into this now, so have a look at those reports. And similarly, the uniform is not good quality and it's not durable. So it's not helping our officers or our staff
Being replaced
their
too
job.
often.
Yes. Okay. So again, some of the qualitative comments were really illuminating.
So the cargo trousers are not practical to search houses on do stop and searches. We're bending down and restraining people on the floor. They learn these great moves in personal safety training, and they just can't do any of them when it actually comes to doing them on the job. The trousers restricts the movement in their legs and affects their physical ability, which worryingly makes them feel less safe and at a disadvantage. This is on and off. Oh, wait, go back. As a female, the trousers are not fit for purpose. To be able to move, bring my leg up higher than 90 degrees, to climb over a wall or bend down, I have to order a huge size in order to get them fit properly. And a lot of these women say, like, I've got like parachute pants on. Where basically just like flap around in the wind when they're chasing after someone, and they have to get them tailored at the cost of themselves, or often some people are wearing men's trousers because it's like too low on the waist and too high. But yeah, a bit of a nightmare for all of this.
Okay, so when we've spoken to people about some of the results of the survey, they do say, we are people are trivializing the problems that people are having with uniforms. So in our survey, and certainly that was what you found in your focus groups, is that people are actually experiencing physical health conditions. Now, of course, there are some conditions that are listed here, menstrual symptoms. Now, of course, that's not caused by uniform, but if you are having those physical symptoms, then uniform is actually exacerbating, it's making it worse. So in our survey, we said, out of all the conditions listed here, can you select any of them that you feel that is made worse or caused by uniform? We also had another option, so if there was something else that we hadn't mentioned, people could say what that was. 57% of our respondents, bearing in mind there was almost 21,000 responses, said that they experienced at least one physical health condition. Obviously, some of these conditions are sex-specific, so we broke it down by sex and said, okay, how many now? Well, 62% of men identified at least one of those conditions, and 85% of women. So that's almost 9 out of 10 women identified physical health conditions that is made worse through wearing the uniform. That's huge. And we also asked about the number of conditions, and this one was something that really quite, it shocked us, wasn't it? Just the scale of it. So on average, men report about 55% of male were saying one physical health conditions, another quarter were saying actually two, I have two of these things. For women, they were more likely to say, 22% said one, a further 24% said two, 18% said 5 or more conditions. So it wasn't that they were just experiencing one physical health condition, they were experiencing 5 or more conditions which they associated through wearing the uniform. We also said, well, how often do you experience these? And for the majority of respondents, they were experiencing them every single day. 10, 12-hour shifts, 5 days a week. It wasn't just the one-off. I mean, there was a few occasional issues, but for the majority of respondents, they were experiencing these issues every day, every week, every month. So in terms of the types of conditions that were most likely to be reported, well, for men, musculoskeletal problems, 44% said musculoskeletal issues that they attribute to the uniform. 38% said crushed testicles. So having that restrictive crotch area is clearly very problematic for men, not just for women. Rubbing of scars, bloatings, there are a number of issues. When we look to our female respondents, 55% of women reported bloating, thrush, crushed breasts, UTIs, so all the things that we've kind of been mentioning previously, but we can now start to quantify just the scale of these issues. And like I said before, it's not just the bloating, it's the bloating along with the thrush, along with the menstrual symptoms. So it's a whole range of issues. We also asked about sick leave. So we mentioned all of these conditions, and we wanted to know, well, what was the impact of that then? Now, women, as we would kind of expect, we're more likely to say, yes, the uniform is physically affecting me, but I'm not going to take time off work for it. Men were less likely to admit that it is affecting them, but you can see here between 4 and 5% of men and women were taking sick leave because of their uniform.
There were 717 comments related to reasons as to why they'd taken sick leave. 404 of them were related to musculoskeletal pain, and the rest to hip pain, back pain, neck pain, all of these things obviously related. And we, as with most of these things, I am keen to take the 4 and the 5% also with a pinch of salt, because how bad does it have to get for you to actually take sick leave? We found that a lot of the comments were pertaining to other strategies of mitigation to ensure that they were getting rest from their uniform and their physical health condition that was being made worse. So one of them said, the pain the uniform causes to my body often results in me coming back to the station early to rest. I've taken annual leave. So again, that's not going to appear on the sick leave statistics. But if they're actually having to take their own annual leave for something that is caused by something that is issued to them by the force, it's quite shocking, isn't it? Just to give my body a rest from wearing the uniform, I'm surprised more officers haven't sued the job yet.
This episode of the Emergency Services Times podcast is sponsored by MSA Safety, proudly supporting emergency services and first responders on the front line. At MSA Safety, protecting first responders isn't just what we do, it's who we are. We work closely with fire and rescue services across the UK to develop and deliver safety solutions designed to meet your ever-evolving needs. That includes MSA Bristol Firefighter PPE, trusted by services across the UK and beyond, shaped through years of collaboration with frontline teams. It also includes our growing investment in innovation and technology, from the connected M1 SCBA modular solution to our agile, fully managed service model that helps keep crews protected and ready to respond. But for us, safety goes beyond equipment. We believe in standing shoulder to shoulder with the people who dedicate their lives to protecting others, whether it's supporting firefighter charities, backing mental health initiatives, or showing up for community events. MSA is proud to be part of the Emergency Services family. To learn more about our work in the UK and how we're supporting first responders every step of the way, visit www.msasafety.com. With MSA Safety, when you go in, we go in with you.
We also asked, well, do you complain? You tell us you've got all these issues. 36% of respondents said, yes, I have gone to my line manager. I have complained about this. This slide is quite shameful. So on average, 76% of those who did complain, no action was taken. And you can see a forced breakdown here. Now, it's probably not that clear, but certainly topping the naughty list was Cumbria Constabulary. In 86% of cases, no action was taken. Nothing at all.
So imagine if you are being brave enough to go to either a male lane manager or anyone at all and say, listen, I'm having this, some of those conditions are maybe embarrassing for people, not just men and women to talk to the other sex, but to also just actually stand up and say, I've got this issue. Please, can I get some new trousers? Please, can I get a replacement stab vest, something a bit lighter? It can just help me be a bit more comfortable, a bit more unrestricted. And what happens? Nothing gets done. Your other colleagues will hear that. They'll be like, well, there's no point in complaining. We spoke to a PCSO. I hope she's not here today. We spoke to a PCSO yesterday who'd been in the force at West Midlands for 20 years. And we spoke to her about this and said, have you suffered with any of these problems? And they're like, oh, yeah, every day. And I said, oh, have you ever said anything to her? And I don't see the point because I just see it as kind of part of the job. And I just said, oh, is that affecting your morale? She's like, yeah, all the time. So it's very worrying that even when, and even when people are reading this report and they see that, it's like, what does that say about culture here? It's not just about the uniform, is it? It's about culture. So even when they do get something done, this person, for example, was granted a change of trousers, but then the upper management wouldn't let her wear them. So occupational health are actually signing those things off, the people who are allowing you to wear those things, and then it's getting blocked at a different level. Again, stinks of cultural problems to do with uniform. My newest stab vest plates are still too heavy following compression back fracture. I have asked for lightweight plates and was refused. I've complained about my trousers being too tight, and I've just been told that I have to wear them. I am ignored no matter how many times I raise the matter. I am put at risk every single day, and despite highlighting this on numerous occasions, no action is taken. I feel as though my well-being and welfare is completely disregarded. I feel that I am not important. It's really sad, that, isn't it? Another couple, I complained about the stab vest causing sagging and pain in her breasts, but there was no outcome. My line manager at the time was male, and he became very uncomfortable with me talking about breasts and said to me that he was considering not raising the issue because it was uncomfortable for him. He didn't seem to understand that the matter was not trivial. And thinking about the impacts on retention, we've spoken about well-being. I bet nearly every talk today has talked about well-being, morale. How do we keep our workforce happy and healthy? We've just hired another 46,500 people since 2019, thanks to the police uplift. We're also kitting out another 13,000 officers in the neighbourhood policing guarantee. Nearly every one of them have got to wear uniform at some point. So what are the widespread impacts on retention? Someone said I get a crushed vagina, constantly having to stand up to rearrange my trousers. They are so horrific. Honestly, if I left the job, these would be the number one reason. Shocking, isn't it? And lastly, because I don't want to kill you by PowerPoint, the woman was like, oh my God, you've got 50 slides. Are you going to do them all? Uniform should not be detrimental to an officer's health and well-being. If we can get uniform right, we can reduce sick days, improve motivation, and improve officers' health and well-being. I see some nods in the audience because I feel like we all agree. Now, Police Scotland has just released its Tools of the Trade report, which basically are just repeating everything we said in the report. We are now in talks with Police Scotland to do their own survey. They've had a national uniform for years, but I mean, it looks like they're still having problems. So we're trying to hopefully identify that at the beginning of next year as well. In terms of what is next, we're doing individual police reports, because I think a lot of police chiefs are going, oh yeah, well, that's the average. I think we're doing a great job. Well, you'll see in about 2 weeks when all those individual force reports come out, and every force gets access to every other people's report. So I'm sure they'll be done. I know everybody likes a lot of comparison. So this database is providing the foundation for the Next Generation Uniform Project, which has just won £600,000 from the government to as part of OPSCA's future uniforms, looking at like new technology, sweat wicking fabrics, etc., etc. And this is also forming the evidence base for the National Police Chiefs Council report in this month. So we shall wait and see what is next. But how have we seen some traction? Our report was released at the end of July to much fanfare. We got a Guardian exclusive in print and online. And my mum ran out to buy all the papers from Tesco, bless her. She's like, oh, it's in print. We also appeared in the Times and everywhere, including, of course, the Emergency Services Times. But we basically made every national paper. We made the news. We made radio. Everybody was shouting about this, so it's really good. We even appeared on a great Good Morning Britain, where they questioned Diana Johnson, who evidently hadn't read the report at that time, and it was very awkward. But she was like, oh, yeah, and of course, police officers and staff need better uniforms. But, you know, we can clearly see there's been a lot of impact here already. And as much as I'd like to take credit for my amazing, unofficial, sexy title today, I don't normally give credit to the Sun. But Jane Moore did con the phrase. In other words, it's tough to tackle crooks when your tackle's crooked. So if you're interested, if we have coaxed you into reading the full report, which is 100 pages, it is available on this QR code. It obviously is available on Google if you just type in our names or the National Uniform Equipment Survey. I imagine we would have got a bigger audience if people had known what I was going to talk about today. But, you know, you can only make uniforms sexy so much, right? But thank you so much. I hope we've left enough time for some questions. We timed that perfectly. Oh, well done us. Thank you so much.
Going to get 2 rounds of applause. What a performance. I do want to leave that QR code up there because sadly there was a lady here before from Devon and Cornwall Police who was very interested because she wants to get new uniform and is battling with, you know, all of it, and she needs the evidence to make a cost case and whatever. And clearly here there are many uniform providers that are trying to do better things. Maternity was one of the things she spoke about. Yeah. So I'm really pleased that you've shared that. Thank you. I would like to give the audience opportunity to ask questions. Lovely, we've got one here. Let's start there.
Hi.
Hello.
Ladies, I had the pleasure of meeting you two yesterday after many discussions. I'm just Joe Public, but ex-military. And I know when we learnt so many lessons from different campaigns that we served in, especially from the uniform and equipment side of things, but we also compared an awful lot against other nations that we served with. What I want to ask is the UK police force, do they ever look at various different nations to see how they compare to what you've just been saying? Because I will say, as a taxpayer, I want my police officers to be comfortable and ready to fight whatever they've got to fight. Listening to that, it's not particularly brilliant, is it? No. So my question, sorry, long-winded, was, do the UK police compare themselves to other nations on what they use for uniform and from an equipment point? Thank you.
Do you want to say this? Because it appeared in some of the comments, didn't it, about comparison?
Yeah, I mean, I think other European countries have a national uniform. So they have the same uniform. So whether that has anything to do with it, whether that improves procurement, I don't know that much. To be fair,
I was going to say, it's a bit difficult because you're not speaking on behalf of the police, are you?
No, you're reluctant to advocate for a national uniform because we know there are problems with that as well in terms of the multi-supplier landscape, etc. People in contracts for years at a time that don't run out. But we were advocating and recommending the report that we have national minimum standards where you can't just like be supplying just some rubbish trousers, £2.20 a pair I found in one force. I mean, no wonder people are getting thrush. You know, what material are they using for that? So we were really keen to do that. And I did some canvassing when I was abroad this summer. I was like saying to my husband, oh, I've got to take a picture of these Italian police officers just over there. Sorry, I'll be back in a minute. But, you know, I always think the European police officers look so smart, don't they? They look so uniform, basically. You know, they seem to get it right. And obviously they're working in extreme weather conditions, very hot, very cold. So, and I certainly think from talking to other police officers that there are lessons to be learned from other countries. Well, how can they get it right? I mean, there's some forces that are doing it better than others. So we can take lessons from them, from the individual force reports. Like the City of London Police didn't even appear in the report in the end because we needed a minimum of 100 respondents for each force, right?
They did appear in the report, they just didn't appear in the individual force breakdowns because there wasn't enough respondents.
Because
in
why
those
would you
forces,
fill in the survey if you loved your uniform, right? And I think a lot of the City of London Police are saying, well, we've got our own tailor. Like, we've got a lot of money that we get to spend on our uniform, and they basically come to us and say, oh, here's a bag of stuff, take what you want. So I think the other forces are knowing that, and they know there's better stuff available, and the police forces are just not invested in it. So it's not that the kit isn't there, it's whether they want to personally invest in their officers and staff. And if they don't do, we've shown you what some of those legal implications, but also implications on morale and well-being over a long period of time, like the effects, like psychological effects of that. Sorry, it was a really long answer to your question.
Okay, so another question, please.
Thanks.
Hi, I volunteer with the police, and I also teach officer safety training. So obviously the body armor is a big thing for me. Well, a big interest area for me. And sort of talking to people, you know, going around suppliers here and talking to other people, it's clear there just isn't anything on the market that's suitable for women at all. So my question is sort of, how do we pressure suppliers into actually doing the research? And, you know, because they've said it's an unsolvable problem. And I'm like, that's ridiculous.
Really?
Well, you know, it's like there's clearly, you know, they're like, oh, well, we've tried this. And I was talking to someone, sorry, this is extending my question, but I was talking to someone and they're coming up with a lightweight one because it might mold around women's bodies a bit better.
Yeah.
But I mean, I actually giving that demand and saying, no, this is better, but it's not good enough because it won't solve the problems. How do we sort of pressurize suppliers into actually saying, well, it's not an unsolvable problem. You know, you need to do it now because it's a massive problem that's affecting a lot of people. Sorry, that was quite lengthy. I apologize.
Yeah. Do you want to answer it as a supplier? Okay, sure. Can I just answer that while they're taking the mic over? Because we know that there was a 2017 third generation stab vest that some forces that has been available since 2017. I asked officers if they were provided with that, and they said, oh no, we only started 2 years ago, and they've told me that the plates don't expire for 10 years, so they told me I've got to wear these for 10 years. I'm like, all right, so you've got to be really uncomfortable for that time. So it's like there are some better options on the market, but whether actually police force are investing. So I'm not sure if it's a supplier issue. I certainly have spoken to some suppliers, like Hero Equipped just around the corner. I've spoken to them on a few occasions where they've shown me this amazing like form-fitted body armor. I'm thinking that's great, but I suppose there's a balance between it's not going to be the most comfortable thing you ever wear, right? Because it has to provide a level of safety. But I think there's certainly got to be better than what we're providing officers and staff at the moment, right?
And it requires that investment. Sorry,
Yeah.
Tom.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is it's not a supplier issue.
Yeah.
We can supply things that are more comfortable. We can supply things that are more fit for purpose. You need to get the people who are making the decisions on what they're buying to change. It's not a supplier.
And we found, you know, we had a question in the survey about cost, and 76% of respondents believed that all uniform decisions were based on cost.
And it isn't. It is, but it isn't to do what you're looking to do here isn't always about cost. It can be done. But my question really was about what we do next. Have you actually spoken to any suppliers about what we can offer them, and how do we get involved with you guys as a major supplier to the police uniforms, not the protective, not the hanging plates, not their stab vest.
But it's all very well like me suggesting, oh, I've seen this amazing trouser, you know, at the emergency services show, and then tell the Federation this. But it's more like, how do we get police forces to buy into that idea? Like, I'm sold, I'm easily sold, but I don't wear it every day. So I sort of back away from this as an academic and just say, here is the research, here is the evidence. You need to do what you think is best with it.
We've got two other questions. Sorry.
Sorry.
Can we move on?
Yes.
Thanks. We've got a lady here. Do you want to come back on the stage so everyone can
Yes.
see you?
Yeah.
Thanks. Lovely.
Just to answer your question, as you know, said before, there is availability of better fitting uniform. There was a BSI paper published this week on inclusive PPE, which is actually fit for purpose, but it's actually saying this is a guide for procurement to say this is available. I think that's where the barrier has been more in the past, is the fact that we've always been told it's, you know, it's high vis, it's fine, you'll be fine at work, and actually it doesn't fit. So when people are taking their items of clothing off because they're saying it doesn't work, I can't run in my stab vest, then they're putting themselves at risk.
Yeah.
It is available. It's about supply and demand as well. I am sit on both sides. I was involved in the paper being written, and I actually I'm a procurement specialist. And I was told by the hierarchy in my company, don't put too many SKUs on the shelf. It's it's another item that you have to buy. It's another item that you have to stock. So we were restricted in what we could actually buy because the store manager was leading the story, and that's where I know things are changing. But in smaller companies, in smaller constabularies, if they're all buying individually, that will still be an issue as well. It is available. You just need to make sure that you're asking the right people what's available out there.
And I also think there's, well, we talk about it as a cost attached to that, but we need to kind of flip that and say, well, actually, it's an investment.
Yeah.
So these things are available. You just have to put the money in to ensure that we are protecting our officers and we are doing the things that we need to do. And the uniform is doing the things that it needs to do. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And this is where it's investing in the uniform, but it's investing in your staff as well.
Yeah.
And the people that are wearing it every day.
We got another question at the back, and then we might need to summarise. But yeah, go ahead.
So I'm still formulating this in my head. My name's Mike from Scottish Fire. What it was is we're doing great work here with the police, and I know within Scotland we're looking to survey our full workforce and get as much information as we can. But is there ways outside of like the National Fire Chiefs that we could potentially work collaboratively, tri-service to look at our national picture across the UK, across all three services, to get that data formulated? And I think that would be something if you...
I mean, we spoke to Fire. We did the British Association of Women Policing conference a few months ago, and Fire were there from Merseyside, not Merseyside.
No, West Yorkshire.
West Yorkshire. And they were like, we'd love to do a national survey because we're having similar issues as well. So, and I think that from my PhD way back when, it highlighted widespread issues across all emergency services. It's just obviously because we've focused on the police. But we know, there's been similar issues in the Army and the military abroad. The Navy actually doing amazing things in America. But again, it seems like, okay, why are we not sharing this information that we found? Why are we not sharing all this data? And that seems like such a shame. But I think that we do need to get a bigger evidence base here. And I think there are lessons to be learned from all forces. All emergency services take part in extreme, unrestricted work,
what I was going to say was I think the reality is a complex picture. I used to work for the National Fire Chiefs Council, so I know the challenges of herding 46 cats on any given subject, and then police is a similar sort of situation. So all of police forces, all the fire services, all the ambulance services are all independent organisations. They have national bodies to try and coordinate and collate and bring things together, which is good. And any evidence like this can be reused in a really powerful way to drive change. But unfortunately, it will take time. You've got to convince the right people. And ultimately, if services, to go back to the lady's point here, sadly, if a service is invested in some uniform and it's got a 10-year shelf life, they are going to struggle to justify replacing it after 2 years. However, you'd like to think if there's a good enough case that people are saying, look, I know you've invested in this uniform, but actually we're getting a lot of medical problems.
It just feels like, a lot of them are not really even speaking to their staff. They're not listening to the staff voice. Like I went one of my focus groups was in North Wales, and they'd spent 20 grand on embroidering a dragon on their shoulder. And they said, oh, but we actually just want the trousers that don't give us thrush. I was like, yeah, fair. I mean, you're talking to the converted here. But so I think that they couldn't understand why their money or the money that was being spent on some things was not being spoken to the actual people that wear them. And I think that was part of the issue. So a lot of the questions, a lot of the statements at the end of the survey were like, thank you just for listening. It's nice to be listened to and feel like it might go somewhere. But
Absolutely. It feels like the more exposure you get in terms of sharing what your research has told you to the right audiences, hopefully will start to drive that change. But for now, I'm going to have to say thank you very much,
so much
for an engaging session. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Remember that by taking time to learn from our speakers, you can earn CPD points from our partner CPDme. So do check out the link in the show notes. Our thanks to MSA Safety for their continued support for our podcast, and to Smart Digital for producing this series. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to For Every Response, the podcast from Emergency Services Times.